of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, 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 not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Okay, so I've had a weird week. Let me tell you something I didn't do this week. Mention Israel on Facebook at all. Because
curious.
that seems like shit is really getting to a point where this divide that exists very commonly, even in the left, where people are like left or liberal, but still really pro-Israel. It seems like that's coming to a head. Like we're reaching a point where people really have to defend this shit.
Yeah.
And I didn't. A, I've already been visited by the authorities this week, and B, well, okay, A point, B, sub point to that. Mossad seems like they would fuck you up way harder than what happened to me. But the other thing about that is I just didn't want to get into like a conversation with like family
Jews,
members
Jay?
of mine.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, no, because but there are tons of Jews that are like against this whole Israel situation, like Adam Friedland, for example. You know, it's not that's exactly the argument that they hit you with is it's anti-Semitic to be against this like this state that's like sort of an ethno state. But it's not. It's about the state itself.
Right.
You know?
And that's because this was like my first sort of time that I questioned the sort of broad church of identity politics was I remember, 5, 6, 7 years ago when I was still getting into this stuff, like people like Norman Finkelstein were pointing out how that's used as a bludgeon, the anti-Semitism charge, to defend everything Israel does. And that's, was kind of my a moment of clarity as far as like maybe this can be used in bad faith, critiquing, calling out someone's, blind spots with bigotry or whatever, being able to say like, this is a Jewish state, so by virtue of criticizing this state, you are criticizing the religion. Like that's been something that's been going on a while now, and now it's we're starting to see the bullshit more.
All right, so I have anti-Semite comedian Anders Lee with me here today. We're doing a two-man ep because I'm going on tour, so we got to bank a bunch of episodes. So we'll be recording a couple of things like this, sort of a little mini, bite-sized tapas episodes.
Nom nom nom.
And we'll fucking dole them out to you little content pigs. They need your little treats. There's a main thing we're gonna get into today, but just to go around what's going on in the news. Israel fucking killed 50 Palestinians, and the original like New York Times stories on it were like 50 Palestinians slipped on a banana peel and fell. They really just downplayed the fact that people were just straight up murdered.
Yeah, I mean, to them, that's still like half an Israeli. 50 Palestinians. If you're the New York Times, it doesn't really start counting unless you hit triple digits as a murder.
Yeah, Palestinians are like stormtroopers.
Right.
Israelis like, oh my God, you killed Han Solo, or something. I don't know. That
the IDF probably models shit off of the stormtroopers. I'm sure they watch Star Wars for guidance.
Yeah, that sounds crazy. But the more you really get down into political wormholes and you read about you ever read that thing about how the Iraq War, the weapons of mass destruction thing, was somebody just basically watched the movie The Rock and then stole the concept of these little glass globes full of poison from. It was completely made up for that movie. It's never existed. That was the justification that they used to get into Iraq. So I don't know. I'm not surprised by anything anymore. Osama bin Laden is a gamer. Like, what? Nothing's real.
He was? I don't know about that.
Yeah. Oh, you got to talk to
SimCity?
Raghav about this. They've finally somehow cracked into, or they released the records on finding Osama bin Laden's like laptops and shit when they raided him. But they came out. They were declassified like last year, and what was weird about it was that they found a bunch of like porn on his laptop, and they also found like Final Fantasy VII, which is my favorite video game of all time. So it's really weird to know that you have that much in common with Osama bin Laden. But also, the like story of Final Fantasy VII is like, it makes you go, wait a minute. He probably related really hard to that. The story of Final Fantasy VII is it starts with these characters that are part of like sort of an eco-terrorist organization, but they're activists, but they're labeled as terrorists by the government.
Is this in like sort of our world, or is it in a total mystical realm?
It's like a cyberpunk future kind of realm.
Yeah.
They live in this city called Midgar, and the city is one kind of giant reactor that sucks this energy called Mako out of the earth, and they're using it to create like all sorts of modern technology and stuff, and they create this thing called materia, which is how you use weapons to fucking shoot fire and lightning at people, yada yada yada. So the entire world runs on Mako, right? And the people that have figured this out, or that have figured out that this is like kind of a bad idea, are these eco activist terrorists called Avalanche, which you're a part of. And there's like a guy with like he's an amputee, he's missing an arm, and he just has a fucking Gatling gun for an arm. Right. And you're like this weird like special ops guy with a fucking sword and one sleeve because it's made by weird anime, Square Enix or whatever. But it's like, so they eventually sort of overthrow and topple this company called Shinra, which basically becomes like merged with the government. Mm-hmm. It's like eerily similar to, I don't know, a lot of it's one of those things like when you're watching Star Wars and you're like, wait a minute, the good guys are the 9/11 hijackers or whatever.
So you're saying that bin Laden took the sacred text that is Final Fantasy and misinterpreted and bastardized it to his own ruthless ends.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think, and it sounds like a joke, but like he played that game, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's weird to know that you guys both liked the same, the same story, I guess.
Right.
And he was, who knows? He might be what a lot of these like mass shooters and stuff are, which is a dork that's weaponized, you know? I don't know. But anyway, don't know what to believe anymore. What's the point of that?
Like, is John McCain alive? I thought he was dead until 10 minutes ago. He's still hanging on, apparently.
Yeah, well, I think there's
fucking Maverick. He's not. He's refusing to die.
Just when you think he's gonna live, he dies. I think that's really funny because he always does that shit where he switches the last minute, like pow, 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 cool or whatever. So my theory on John McCain is that his whole thing for this this week is that he's dying and he's like, don't let that man come to my funeral, Trump or whatever, even though you voted with him 83% of the time. Like, what is this weird stand you're taking? But everyone forgets he's a maverick, and he always switches at the last minute. So I think right before he dies, he's going to be like, check this out. Donald Trump, you're allowed to come to my funeral. And then die, and then just sort of be like winking and doing finger guns as he flatlines.
Or he's like, I am Donald Trump. You ever seen them in the same room?
Yeah. Oh, I am Pagliacci. Yeah, so if anyone wants to keep Anders updated by creating a Is John McCain Dead app, that would help all of us because, we worry. And frankly, I'm waiting because it's gonna be probably a funny day on Twitter or whatever. Fuck that guy. Jesus, there's all these people like, there's all these like celebrities right now that are like caping for McCain and then also I don't know, taking weird stances about the Israel thing, like blaming the left for this happening and stuff.
Yes.
like Hal Sparks has now joined the weird Michael Ian Black, Andy Richter sort of like old dudes of Twitter that want to like preach to you about pragmatism and shit. Do you remember that guy?
Hal Sparks.
Right, exactly.
What show was he on?
He was on like I Love the 80s.
Oh, okay. VH1, sort of a talking head.
Yeah, he was one of the
About talking heads.
Whoa. I wonder if that was addressed on the show. But he was like one of those comedians that's like kind of like a metrosexual back when that was a thing.
Oh, yes.
Like
sort of an Eddie Izzard type.
Yeah, but Eddie Izzard's like a
full on,
like gender bending,
yes.
like I think he's
Lizard.
fully trans now or whatever. Right. Eddie, a lizard person, yeah. But no,
that's what non-binary people should.
Izzard people. Yeah, there's some fucking like weird Alex Jones listener that's got a conspiracy.
Yeah,
they're Izzard people. It goes all the way to the top. But Hal Sparks was this dude who was like, I don't know, like he looked like he was trying to convince you he was into rock and roll, but like he bought his rock and roll outfit at Target. So it was like designer jeans and then like a black T-shirt, but it was probably like a $50 black T-shirt, and then like eyeliner and a hair gel, like that type.
A kiss lapel.
Yeah, like a real lame faux rock dude or whatever. You fucking 15 years ago on VH1, and now suddenly
also an expert in political science.
Yeah,
and,
which
theory
is so weird that we just like perpetually we keep doing this. We keep stepping on the same rake, which is like believing in this myth that someone should be listened to, someone should be trusted, just simply by virtue of them having been successful in the entertainment industry on some level. I don't know why this is a thing. Like, there are people that you should are smart and they're famous because they're smart, and then there are people that kind of overlap. Yeah, which is why we're so famous.
Yes.
If those two things are correlated.
It's because we are smart that we are not famous, actually. Goes all the way to the top.
Yeah, we're tortured, the Crow dudes, man. But like, I just keep thinking about this because, one of the things that I've been sort of like into, and I've been reading a lot about, and I feel kind of passionately about, is the Sesta Fosta thing, and I'm just like really. I don't understand how Amy Schumer got away with promoting this thing and then has to have been tweeted at multiple times about how it was kind of a dick move,
right? And
just completely went on all blasé with her life. Went on then to like a week ago go to Caroline's and like interrupt this guy's breakout headlining set from the audience and demand to do 10 minutes so she could practice for Saturday Night Live. Like, this is crazy, right? Crazy person. But I always kind of assume that someone has to have mentioned to her, like, do you know this Sesta Fosta thing is actually bad? And it's either happened and she's turned around and, just kind of like, well, whatever, PR mistake. If I apologize, then I'm fucked. Or just refuses to believe it. And
are you sure, though? Because, I mean, these people are so insulated just in general that I wouldn't be surprised if no one has brought it to her attention or she's had no exposure to...
Yeah, I don't know. I think that might be the case because, like, God, Seth Meyers ate at my job the other day, and I missed him because I was out on delivery, but, like... I would have fucking talked to him. I would have, like, tricked him and been like, hey, I'm a comedian. Can I get your autograph? Could you sign this, in the end of a pamphlet or something?
By the way, shout out to Ezra Klein, who I saw at my job on Sunday and congratulated him for kicking Sam Harris's ass.
Nice.
And he was like, that was not what I was expecting you to say.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I could have held his feet to the fire about... No, I would have... That would have been a bad idea for me to criticize him in any way, but...
You wouldn't have gotten 20%. Sure.
I based on like the service calculations, I believe it was more of an 18.8% appropriate tip.
Oh man, that's a fun bit. Him getting brunch or something.
Yeah.
I'm shit faced off of these mimosas. Let me get some more hollandaise sauce. Yeah, you might be right. I mean, they might be like fully just insulated, but then it's like they're also free from criticism.
Right.
In a lot of ways, like Amy Schumer just flat. That was a dick move. Like I don't care who you are. Right. I don't care who you are. Right there. That's funny right there. I'm doing a Larry the Cable Guy bit. No, what I meant to say was like. There are some people that sort of came to her defense and were like, everyone always attacks women, comedian or whatever. But that was a dick move no matter who you are because it wasn't just a bump. Famous people.
Right. That's like that is the same exact thing as the Israel analogy, because of anti-Semitism that doesn't justify Israel doing shit. Exact same comparison to Amy Schumer,
Yeah.
One and the same, really.
That's kind of why
she is responsible
yeah.
for Gaza.
Amy Schumer killed 50 people at Caroline's. And, the New York Times just isn't going to they're not going to report on it.
Right.
They just died. No, she showed up to this guy, what is it,
Brandon Sagalow?
Yeah. His breakout comedy headlining set, which is like Caroline's is a club that does something really cool for New York comics, which is that they move you up pretty fast. And like if you prove your worth there to the bookers, they'll give like people that are just to spot people.
Hannah Boone, shout out to her. She's doing it tonight. Killer comic.
Fucking A. Hannah Boone's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll give like people like us like your headlining set in fucking Manhattan, in like Times Square area or whatever. That's really cool. And so for people to achieve that, it's like this huge fucking deal. So. It's not just bumping someone. It's not just showing up and going, oh, hey, I need to do a spot, so they're going to put you on next week or whatever. It's like shitting all over someone's like life work.
And it also kind of sucks that this flew under the radar because this could have been something he could have parlayed into something that like, oh, I'm the guy who got interrupted by Amy Schumer. I'm going to get booked on this thing or whatever. But it seems like that's not really happening.
He could have got smeared in the New York Post.
Yeah.
You got to capitalize on these motherfucking things. I'm not even joking. I mean, like... I would be an idiot if I didn't like connect myself to the story because there's a point to like what happened to me, but also like as long as I got this tour coming up, might as well use what I'm saying to get people that agree with me to come out to my shows and shit. You know? But I thought he handled it pretty well though. It was a pretty classy way of handling it because she really put him in a situation where if he had said no, everyone would have hated him. Yeah. So he just had to go like, ladies and gentlemen, Amy Schumer. So I think at least he got, the story there was that he was a class act, but but he could have, I don't know. He should, like, people should go look this guy up now because, he's clearly a cool guy,
Right.
I think. I don't know him that well. Maybe he's an anti-Semite.
I'm not sure. I remember. I'm not sure if I was going to tell a story about someone who might be him, but I don't remember it was the same person.
That's
probably best to leave off air.
That's a great plan.
Yeah,
we should.
Let's not. Yes.
Let's smear him willy-nilly, and then at the end of it, realize you're talking about Carlos Delgado or something. Yeah. I don't know. So, Amy Schumer got away with this ad promoting Sesta Fosta, which is actually bad, but you have to look into it to figure out that it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing ever happened. And it just makes me wonder because, like, I got this story out, and I kind of used the platform I had this week with Chapo and shit to compare what happened to me with how they sell Sesta Fosta and, like, try to get the word out and get people interested. And I had, like, my sister just message me, like, today, and she was like, can you explain the Sesta Fosta thing?
Right.
And so I did, and she was like, oh, great, that's an interesting take. Can you send me more stuff? And I was like, wow, you do really forget that people outside of your direct scene, like, have to have things re-explained. Like, people just don't know any of this shit,
Right.
So, I don't know. I don't know what to do about that, but I do think it's funny because, so I made this joke on Twitter, just basically combining these two things. And I went, Amy Schumer just interrupted my set to talk about Sesta Fosta. Like, that was just the bit. Just smash those two things together. And then all these people thought it was real because I guess they follow me from political Twitter and they don't know the story of her interrupting that guy or whatever. And I was going to correct them, but I let them all get mad at it for a few days because It was like maybe if enough of these people all tag her at the same time, she'll have to look at it. But to no avail. She has like 4 million Twitter followers, so I'm sure she just doesn't check updates and shit like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're listening, that wasn't real. That was just she did both of those two separate things.
Right.
You know.
Well, we don't know the material she did. You know, maybe it was.
What if her next special is just like, whores! You know what you did. You deserve to die. It's a crime. It's in the Bible. Everyone's like, this is feminist as fuck. I don't know why she talked like Tom Waits in that. She changes her voice too. I don't know, man. So yeah, I don't know. If you see Seth Meyers or Amy Schumer on the street, please tell them that was a shitty thing to do, and that they should maybe take it down. Well, it's already passed, but I don't know. So that's kind of the end of my piece on that. But the main event of this episode here is something that I learned about fairly recently, and that Anders Lee here is way smarter than me about, which is that Dennis Kucinich kicks ass. I wasn't really aware because when he was running for president, I was 16. So I was doing like whippets and shit, and I was an idiot. Hanging out in the back of an El Camino, just like that Sum 41 song. But you've enlightened me. So I guess what we should do for this week is, Anders Lee, please explain Dennis Kucinich to me.
All right. So that's what you were doing when you were 16. I was deep in the life and times of Congressman Dennis Kucinich. That's was my biggest interest as a teenager. One of them. He was one of my heroes.
So you were like fucking like a lot, right?
I was deep in Kucinich. He really looks out for his supporters. He does have a thing for redheads.
I didn't mean you were fucking him. I just meant you were a 16-year-old who had a lot to say about Dennis Kucinich.
That much is absolutely true.
Which clearly it was, you're one of the cool ones.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is before, as I was starting to get politicized, I was for a long time sort of a liberal social democrat, but I didn't really know what those terms meant so much. I was, looking at things through the framework we're given, and I remember getting interested around the time Obama was running for president, and in the New York Times, they had this thing that was like everybody's health care plan, and everybody had a really wonky proposal that didn't really amount to universal coverage. And Kucinich, his was very simple, just like everyone should have health care. It's just a right. And I just got into this guy, as I did at the time with Ralph Nader and Bernie Sanders, who at the time were considered jokes. All three of them were like this clown car.
That's not true. You didn't know who Bernie Sanders was until 2016,
right,
according to the internet.
Right, and before I discovered that, I could, because I hated Hillary Clinton so much.
I found out about Bernie Sanders on the online harassment message boards that I frequent, where we do sexism.
I was deployed, yeah. But Kucinich, who, is I guess kind of relevant this week because he lost a bid for the Democratic nomination in Ohio to run for governor, which was kind of a bummer. But it's interesting because the guy who's running against Richard Cordry any other year would have been thought of as the Kucinich of that race because he was head of the Consumer Financial Protection Board, which was founded by Elizabeth Warren helped create. He's a very, pretty progressive attorney general of Ohio. He stood up to insurance companies and stuff, but it's not to the degree that Kucinich was. So Kucinich saw an opening in this race and was like, I'm actually going to say we can do even better than this. And we'll get to that race in a minute. But Kucinich, fascinating guy. He's short. He's like 5'7". Which is used as an excuse to, and in one of the articles we read, like, they asked somebody in like 2003, 2004, like, Kucinich has all these great ideas. Why can't you support him? Like, and he's like, well, he just doesn't. He's not going to be president. Well, why not? Because he's, it's going to be someone who's taller.
Yeah,
You know?
one of my favorite things about that Matt Taibbi piece
Yes.
he sent me from like 2003 about his presidential bid was like that. There's this thing called the Dennis Kucinich paradox, which was that like because someone has the right politics, therefore they can't win.
Yeah.
And so he was looking at all the two Johns, the two guys that were tall and named John that he was running against, John Edwards and John Kerry, and was like, these people are going to win like precisely because we all collectively believe in the myth that they have to be kind of like meaningless, and they also. They treat their audiences like they're babies, while like someone like Kucinich treats 18-year-olds like they're adults.
Right.
So
exactly.
they were talking about that person who he talked to from John Edwards' camp, who was like they were just giving out hot dogs, and the sign on the hot dog stand said "Free hot dogs, puppy love." And he goes, maybe you shouldn't put the word puppy in this next to these hot dogs because people don't really want to think about like puppies when they're eating hot dogs, because it might make you imagine you're eating dogs. Like that's a myth or whatever. And the woman's just like, but people just love puppies. Like that's the political strategy of mainstream Democrats is like, you're a bunch of fucking little babies and we're just going to kind of offer you a bunch of platitudes. And
And that was at the time when and this goes into the paradox thing, like at the time when the idea of the presidency, just the model of it, is platitude speaking white guy. And then we update it a little bit, and like it can be platitude speaking black guy.
Yeah.
And then now it's like insane person. And hopefully we can transcend into person who actually has concrete ideas for transforming the world and the country in a more humane direction, which Kucinich has been doing all along. He was from Cleveland, Ohio, child of a truck driver who lived in Cleveland, and he had like 6 or 7 siblings. He was the oldest, and they moved 21 times before he was 18. So he would be tasked with finding the next place for them to live. And it's very interesting because in one of the profiles we read, and this is something that, according to the reporter, this is something that they had to dig up. This wasn't something Kucinich volunteered, but he now lives in the same house his owned since like the 70s in Cleveland, and there's a family that just moved in down the block from him, and he like this, and it's like a working class black family who moved in, and he went over to their house and introduced himself just like this old white guy, and they were like kind of taken aback by it, and he was like, oh, you don't have any furniture? And they were like, no, we can't really afford it, and he just gave them his furniture.
Oh, that fucking rules.
Yeah, he's just like, because he remembers what it's like to be poor, like he grew up just with nothing.
He reminds me of this guy Mattress Mac from Houston, who was like an ex-crackhead that started a furniture warehouse, and everyone loved him. He was like a locally beloved guy. And during the hurricane last year, Joel Osteen wouldn't open the doors of his mega church, so Mattress Mac was like, "Fuck that! Come on into the furniture store." He totally saved the day.
Good man.
Yeah. That also, the story kind of oddly reminds me of one of the other footnotes of the reasons I just remember Kucinich was because when 30 Rock was on the air, there was this weird joke where I think Liz Lemon is talking to Tracy Jordan, that's his name in the show, and his wife. And she's like, I support Obama, like as a way, like you're black, so I support Obama. And Tracy Morgan's wife goes, we support Kucinich. And I never really got that joke, but it's like the joke is that they're like, no, they're politically like they have politics too that aren't just. And Kucinich is like a leftist and a fucking radical, and he's cool.
Yeah, well, kind of. I mean, he he ended up. Going to, he got really good grades in school, and there's this actually story about he used to be on the football team. Like this tiny guy was a quarterback who was third string for a while, and he eventually started as a quarterback at his like high school football team. He's just an amazing. Like he's been down so many, and that's why it's like, when he was running for president, people are like, you can't win. Like, why are you running? And the lesson that we've kind of taken that from that now is like, okay, maybe he couldn't, but his ideas are getting out there, and he's like planting seeds, and he believed in that. But at the time, you could tell he actually thought he was gonna win. Because this guy has been like on just at the bottom so many times and managed to make a huge comeback.
Yeah, he's like a tall tale.
Yeah.
There was a thing in that article that I take that, Dennis Kucinich. There's a thing in that article that I liked where they talked about how when you're on a campaign like that, like even if people are telling you you're not going to win, they likened it to a phrase from martial arts, which is that like you'll lose if you're fighting to save your life. Which is, that if it reminded me of a saying that I remember from when I used to be a big gambler. I used to play a lot of poker back when that was a thing, and I still would play. It's just that people are not into it anymore. It was very fun, and I had a little bit of I was hooked on a little bit. But there's a saying I liked a lot, which is "scared money doesn't win." Because if you go to sit down to play some cards and you're like, I have to make rent, you won't win because it'll affect all the decisions you make, and you won't play on like principles.
Right.
You'll be afraid to take risks and things like that or whatever. So that was a really interesting analogy to being someone who has the Dennis Kucinich paradox or whatever. Like you just have to do what you're doing as if you were going to win or completely regardless, just based on principle. And then the effect of it after the fact is like, well, you shifted everything, and that's still good,
Right.
Or you win.
Or you win, yeah. And he's just put it all on the line a bunch of times. I mean, he ran for city council and lost, and then there's a thing in the article about how he was a theater dude, which I didn't know this part of it, but he wrote this like avant-garde play called Insanity that one of the theater people in Cleveland was like, this is really good. Like, this is holy shit. They can't believe like a kid from Cleveland wrote this.
Cool.
And like after he lost his campaign for city council the first time, he went to his old professor and was like, what should I do? Should I do theater and politics? Or theater or politics? And his professor was like, well, they're basically the same thing. It's just politics is worse writing.
His professor was Ronald Reagan or something, or Roger Stone.
Yeah.
Man, that's fucking wild. Like, I just want to know what his crazy theater years were like and what that play
I want to get a
is.
copy of that.
I mean, I'm just imagining having a phase where he dresses up like Klaus Nomi and shit. He's like wearing fucking leotards and screaming and shit.
Uh-huh.
Just shitting in a bucket as like a performance art thing.
Right. I mean, he probably like... Yeah, we can probably get a copy of it. Let's see if I'll reach out. I'll find a way.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
We'll act it out in the local theater public thing or whatever.
Yeah. So he ends up going into politics. He dedicates his life to that and gets elected to city council pretty quickly. He's like 29, elected mayor of Cleveland, which is a big deal at the time. And he comes in and he's like running against the establishment politics in the city, and pretty soon there's a big thing he has to contend with where the city council wants to sell the Cleveland's municipal electrical company, Muni Light, and he refuses to do it. And because of that, the bank that Cleveland gets money from defaults on their loan because they want him to do this. Everybody wants him to do this, and he just refuses, flat out refuses. They try to recall him. He wins by a hair, and there's actually somebody tried to take out a hit on him.
Holy shit.
Yeah, he almost got fucking whacked, which is interesting because, we're talking like about ideologies and stuff. He's not a Marxist. There's some positions where he's kind of to the left of Bernie Sanders, especially on foreign policy. But I don't like Bernie Sanders. We know for a fact he's read Marx. He's familiar with this stuff. He knows about class politics. Kucinich,
he's got those stick and poke tattoos that say class warfare and shit.
He's done some DIY shit. Yeah, Kucinich has always been a Democrat and looks at things through a liberal framework.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he, at the time, and this makes me wonder, if he had been a radical and he had said, this is in the 70s when, like, the radical left had more of a presence in the United States. If he had said, hey, Black Panthers, Young Lords, Socialist Workers Party, come to Cleveland, let's occupy this bank, let's do this thing, let's make a fucking socialist society in Cleveland, he would have been whacked. Like, he would have been killed.
Well, it's a good thing he was busy prancing around reading, fucking... what do you do
like
in theater school?
Artaud or Sartre.
I don't know.
If you read Sartre, well, we don't have to. Yeah,
I was trying to remember the name of the Scarlet Letter or some.
Nathan Hawthorne, something like that. No, the Scarlet Pimpernel.
I was trying to remember something from theater, which, to be honest with you, I wasn't in very long.
The Music Man.
Yeah. All right. Well, that riff sucked. I might edit that out.
But he ends up getting voted out on his re-election.
Les Mis. All right,
Les
there we
Mis,
go.
yes.
That's what I was trying to think of. And we'll continue.
Les Mis, Cleveland edition. This really is like if Les Mis was in Cleveland, his whole saga. But he gets... I was watching this interview from the 70s where they were talking to him, and this is kind of a side note, but he was talking about how his administration and how he was including a lot of women, a lot of, he said, African Americans and ethnics, which now sounds really fucking weird, but at the time, whiteness was still not as clear cut. So, like, him being an ethnic mayor, it's not as big of a deal as a black mayor.
Yeah.
But it's still, like, kind of like Kucinich versus, like, Smith or something. That was kind of a big deal. And at the time, diversity also meant Irish people, Slovakian, Polish.
That's such a 70s thing.
Yeah.
That reminds me of, I just did Kath Barbadura and Rachel Millman's wrestling podcast, and we were talking about the history of like pro wrestling and how they used to have, like, before there was cable, like the national cable or whatever, to where everyone could keep track of these national stars. There were like these local factions.
Mm-hmm.
There was just a bunch of different state factions, and because there were like still like ethnic neighborhoods and stuff like that. So for example, when they made Hulk Hogan, when they thought up like your name is going to be Hulk Hogan and your identity is going to be this, they made him that because they were like, you're going to be the Irish guy because we already have one guy that's for the Italians.
Hogan is Irish?
I
thought
guess,
that was a German. Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was confusing too, and he doesn't seem very Irish.
No.
He seems kind of Scandinavian to me, but
Yeah.
But that was at least like the pitch that they explained. It was like, yeah, we need a fucking working class Irish guy because we already got this Italian guy, and like,
What was their ethnicity? Were they fucking
who?
the people making up?
This is Vince McMahon who did this.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
That's an Irish name. That's weird. Okay.
I don't know what the fuck Vince McMahon. He looks like a match.
What is he?
He looks like this Pokemon called Machamp to me.
Yeah.
He's got that weird hair, but I don't know. I just thought it was interesting because if you're like growing up right now,
I get my nunchucks from a Polish boxing gym.
Yeah, you very good crowd so far. Okay, so we have a concept of just whiteness now that's kind of pervasive, but it seems like that's been sort of a malleable thing throughout history, and like there's been like this whole different idea of different ethnicities and stuff, and people like moving kind of in and out of whiteness in a weird way. I don't know, but anyway, go on.
Okay, so that was in the 70s. He takes like a sabbatical from politics. He like finds himself. He becomes friends with Shirley MacLaine and gets into like meditation, veganism and shit.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
George Harrison.
Right, and then
starts a podcast about transcendental meditation.
Right,
quits comedy, moves to LA.
He basically did that. Yeah, and then in the 90s. Cleveland, all the fucking private electrical companies are like going bankrupt, and like it becomes really apparent that this was a great thing that he did to save the municipal electric company. And also he saved the hospital. Like, he did a bunch of shit that at the time cost him his career, and people didn't recognize it for like decades. After which he ran for state senate, got elected there, then ran for Congress in 96, and was elected on like an anti-NAFTA platform. Interestingly, at the time, he was pro-life. He wasn't. He was pro-life up until he ran for president the first time. So that is one of those things that's like, it's interesting because he has a shtick, but you can tell he believes the things that he's saying, but he still is playing into the shtick. You know, like with abortion and shit. I do honestly believe that he had a come to Jesus moment because he's Catholic. And so that was like informing his view on it. And then he like
probably during all that transcendental meditation, George Harrison shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And he came back to Congress and was like, this is fucked up. And this is something that is less controversial to point out now, but he was saying that not only am I pro-choice now, but I'm going to fucking expose people who actually think that women should be jailed for having abortions, because that's kind of like and you know, other podcasts have gone into this. That's kind of the contradiction of the pro-life movement, is because they'll say like, yeah, we think abortion should be illegal, but we don't want to like lock up or prosecute women who have them. Like, that doesn't make any sense logically.
Yeah.
And he pointed that out, and he actually named members of Congress who believed that, and then they went on the air and denied it, and they called him a joke, and he was kind of written off.
Damn.
Yeah. Then he starts running for president, and 2003, 2004, and this is from the debate, one of the Democratic primary debates for the 2004 election, where they ask him like, "Hey, why are you here? Why are you staying in the race?" And he says, "I'm the voice for getting out of Iraq, for universal single-payer health care, for getting out of NAFTA, the WTO, for having our children go to college tuition free." And then Larry King asks him, like, so you're here to just make statements? And he asks him, like, is marriage inherently between a man and a woman? And he's the only person on the stage who says no. And he goes on to say...
And did he ever tell them where his Lucky Charms were? Because that impression was incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, I noticed that because I think we might have talked about this before, but somebody just dug up like an old clip about like his platform where Jon Stewart on The Daily Show was like, you know, this guy's fucking wacko. What's next? Like, you know, Chief Justice chick with a dick or whatever?
Right, because he said that if when he considering Supreme Court nominee, he said he would consider gay people, he would consider transgender people, which now Republicans would say.
Yeah.
But back then, like that was so weird to watch. Like Jon Stewart, like didn't seem like that long ago, but make this incredibly transphobic joke.
Well, I think it tells you a lot about like the center and like the whole concept of a paradigm, because they, you know, if you. There's a little like logical fallacy you're kind of getting into when you're like, no, we have to cling to the center, because all you're doing is basing your politics on whatever is most acceptable and sort of like keeps your ego intact and, you know, isn't scary. But then if, you know, everyone argues that there's some sort of merit in that because, well, not everyone, but like, you know, centrist liberals, David Simon, all these people, whatever, argue that that's like, that has to be done because, you know, the ship is going to get thrown off course if you go too far or whatever. But then, like, you can look up now shit that these people said 10 years ago, which they completely would not stand by today. Yeah. And it violates, you know, their sort of their definite their identity that they have like always been the people fighting for the best or whatever. Mm-hmm. It is embarrassing to watch that Jon Stewart clip, you know?
Yeah. It is, and it's also because, like, he was, I mean, it's interesting because he treats politics, and especially presidential politics, kind of like a band or like a, you know, or a comedian, like a performer. Yeah. Because he, instead of saying, like, I'm going to be the most broad, I mean, there are performers like that too, or like, I'm going to try to appeal to the most people. He's like, no, I'm going to find my fan base, and, like, I'm going to just be loyal to them, and they're going to reward me for that, and like,
Yeah.
so he had his ragtag bunch of anti-war activists in the 2000s who were like, this guy has credibility with us.
He's like an Eric Andre, but he's running against like Chris D'Elia's.
Yes, exactly. And now, yeah, it's. I mean, because that
He's showing his dick to everyone and shit. Running on legalized ranch.
probably, yeah. But so he ran in 2004 and in 2008, between which time he met his wife, Elizabeth Kucinich, who is twice as tall as him, which shouldn't be the first thing I say about her, but that's, how people remember her. She's British, red hair. Again, I'm listing physical attributes first. Because this is a reason he's made fun of, is because he has this hot wife and he's like this short guy, which is really stupid, because his wife is like a academic. She's really smart. They the story how they met is pretty incredible too. He had a friend who's kind of like a guru, who he was complaining to about being single, and his friend was like, "You're searching for people, just like let them come to you." And then the next day he had a meeting about monetary policy, and
his friend the Bhagwan
yes
advised him.
Yeah, he had this meeting about monetary policy, and this woman, Elizabeth, came to his office, and they just like connected, and then they started corresponding, and then they met at a conference a few weeks later, and within the span of a few hours decided to get married.
Wow.
Yeah. I bet they fucked.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
You should before you marry, especially someone like Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah. Which, this was, 10, 15 years ago. That sound like if that happened to one of my friends, would be like, yeah, that's not going to work out. But they're still married. It's true love.
I don't know. I'm not. That doesn't seem that crazy to me. Just because I've had experience. I've had relationships that started pretty quickly like that. Mm-hmm. Also, that does sound like something a manic depressive would do to me. Like if he was like super ramped up that week, he'd be walking around just like, "Oh my, I've been thinking about this all week. You got to listen to this Joe Rogan episode." All right, so it's like you and me, like I'm a politician and you have red hair, and we're doing this right now. But it's like it's happening right now, like if he was on that kick, you could start a relationship that way. She just has to stick around for when he crashes and watches a lot of streaming television.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, though.
Yeah, and he also doesn't care. That's a great thing. He's like, I don't make fun of me and my wife. Like, that's fine. Like, you do you.
He does seem like one of those politicians. The radical guys are always just like whatever. Like Bernie had that famous story where someone came up to him and asked him to sign a book, and they were like, "Can you give it? My name is Capitalism. Can you dedicate it to capitalism or whatever?" And he's just like, "Whatever." And he just hands him back the book, and it's just like crapism or something. Like wasn't even paying attention. He
doesn't do selfies.
Yeah.
He'll be rude to people. Yeah.
Yeah. These people seem to have a different way of looking at everything.
Right, because they're in it because they believe they're not constantly worried about their image.
They're running on an ideology as opposed to a Machiavellian brand thing.
But he's at the same time very shrewd politically. So this, he got redistricted in 2012. He was a congressman for a very long time, and he found this way to kind of finesse this very particular locality into reelecting him a bunch of times, even though people considered him a weirdo. And then the Republicans in Ohio redistricted him out of office. This past year, he ran for governor and did, considering all things considered, I had higher hopes, but he did surprisingly well. He got 20%, 30%, something like that. But his platform was mostly anti-gun, which he may not have run on in a different race, but that was one of Cordry's, if you're looking at it from sort of a liberal perspective, that was his blind spot. He got an A rating for the NRA, so Kucinich gets a little pin that says F on it because he got an F from the NRA.
Very clever.
Yeah. And this is one thing where I'm kind of glad he didn't win because he ran on an assault weapons ban, which I'm in favor of as far as manufacturing and selling assault weapons.
Mr. F. Sorry, I just remembered from Arrested Development.
Oh, yeah.
That pin that means, mentally retarded female. That was the joke from a show from 10 years ago, clearly. Go on.
So he is running on this platform. Oh, so he wants to ban all assault weapons, not only the sale, but also retroactively ban them for people who already possess them, which I think is insane. Like I'm not on board for that. Like if he that if he had that
wouldn't have gone over very
no.
well.
And this is a guy who actually would have tried to do that shit if he got in office and it passed. He would have. He was like, we got to collect them. We got to go to the people of Ohio and tell them to give us back their guns. And that
I
would
was just reading in the Bhagavad Gita that if you return your guns in, you'll feel light inside of you.
You'll feel a light. It'll be maybe not the one he wants, but yeah, you would have had the NRA alt-right descending on Ohio and you would have had possibly a bloodbath.
All right,
that Kucinich would have been kind of responsible for. That would have been insane. But it's funny because like I was saying, he has a shtick, and he takes and he looks for what the most up-to-date language in activist circles is. And I was watching one of these debates, and he keeps dropping the term safe space.
He just caught up to
right. So he's like, but it's weird because he's still looking at things through this liberal framework. So he'll be like, what's the point of having a state if you can't have a safe space? That's why we have a state of Ohio, is to have a safe space. So we can't have guns in the safe space that is the state.
Okay. All right. I'm maybe not completely in love with him then.
Yeah.
That's a little silly.
But he's genuine. He believes this shit. He's still a politician, and he's going to be corny to some extent. But that would have been great to see him in there. I don't know.
That is very hello, fellow kids.
Yes.
Actually, it's not hello, fellow kids. It's not he's pretending to be young. He's just like a curmudgeonly old person who's like, I hear you guys like rap music. Well, let me break it down for you. My name's Dennis Kucinich, and I'm here to say, give me your
an
guns.
F from the NRA.
There you go. Ha ha. All right. So that's I guess that's funny that he was using that sort of language.
Yeah.
Because we all learned that term at least 5 years ago, and that's why it's already been all the way through the cultural meat grinder, and now it's the thing that fucking right-wing freaks. Whoa, you need a safe space.
Yeah.
It's already post what it was originally meaning. Cool. Do we have anywhere to go from here?
Kucinich 2020. That's
no.
Think? I mean, well, it's just and this.
About an hour, so it's perfect.
Yeah. Okay. One of my biggest takeaway from the article is he said in 2003, 2004, he feels like Johnny Appleseed because he's going around planting seeds all over the country. And that is true. Was he...
He's fucking.
Yeah. Was he... It would have been interesting and great to see if he had been an actual leftist or socialist and he had gotten involved with, just the organizing shit in conjunction with... He had ran, a Eugene Debs style thing.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that. And, he's still, an example of somebody who has principles, and some of the things they believe in are naive and stupid, but he actually believes in good shit, and he's someone to work with and to work in coalition with. And there's going to be more of him, more people like him in the coming years. So I am hopeful, and I think maybe he'll find a role in a future cabinet or as maybe a congressman again or mayor. That'd be cool. We'll see.
Yeah, my man, Mayor Crazy. Mayor, take your guns. Aside from that, those couple of caveats and the last thing, the guns and the hilarious safe space branding shit or whatever. Very inspiring story. Very cool.
Yeah,
I'm on board, and I think I agree with your point about him. Being someone who could be part of some sort of rehabilitation or whatever. Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right. Well, rad. I think that's a good ep. As always, my tour dates are pinned to my Twitter, and I'll update my website. I have this opinion that like having a website is like the only people that ever look at that are bookers. But I've had a few people go like, "Hey, I checked your website and there's nothing there." So God, yeah, I have you people from the past. I'll update my website and I'll put the tour dates up there. But yeah, also if you're listening and you happen to be in Kansas City, go buy tickets to the show. It's at the Barrel of the Bottoms because I've been offered a deal which is that if we can sell out the first show, I'll get a second show where I'm headlining and I'll get to keep all that cash, and that'd be really cool. But I don't know how much reach I've got in KC right now, so we'll play it by ear. You want to plug anything?
Follow me at Anders Lee here on Twitter. I will be at the Music Inn on Saturday, this coming the 19th, if you're in New York City, doing my one-man show, Dummy, which is about being the type of person who is obsessed with Dennis Kucinich. If you are a Kucinich expert, chances are we have a diagnosis in common. Starts with an A, ends with an autism. And check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, watch Dummy. I watch it. It's really good. And also, if you've been a listener to the show from the beginning, don't worry. We won't do these excessive plugs all the time. But I just figured, we just got a little bump, got that Chapo bump. So we should get all this shit out of the way up front. And if you're here from Chapo, welcome to the pod. Good to have you guys. Rate, review, subscribe. Hit us up on Patreon. The more money we make, the more of this shit we can make, and we get the shit out there. And who knows? Maybe I'll get rated again, and we'll relive the magic sometime next year. All right.